This episode will be presented in 3D in a couple months, because we're going to do a post-conversion, because those always turn out great. These are my glasses from Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. These were the ones they gave out opening night for everyone to watch. I wonder when 3D is going to become a thing again. Usually I feel like that goes with a 30-year cycle. Once Avatar 2 inevitably gets released in 2035, I don't know, maybe that will slightly break the 30-year cycle. After almost 2.5 years of being requested Harry Potter films, I have finally made it to the final one, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. This was only released 8 months after Part 1. And when it came out, it was widely acclaimed. It was winning all kinds of praise from the critics, from the audiences. It was one of the highest grossing movies of all time. And it wrapped up the series in a nice red and gold Gryffindor bow. Or it at least tried its best to wrap everything up. I mean, for being a two-parter, I'm still surprised by just how much they cut from the final edit of the film compared to the book, because I thought that was the point of the two-parter, to keep more in. But at the same time, as a film that needs to rely on pacing and pure entertainment, this one shines just as bright as a lightning bolt. Harry Potter, the last one, as I like to call it, takes place immediately after the Deathly Hallows Part 1, and after an exciting bank heist, we return to Hogwarts, where the large ensemble cast reunites to take on Voldemort and his Death Eaters. In the meantime, Harry, Ron, and Hermione continue to destroy the Horcruxes. Who will win in the end, and who will die? Are they really gonna build this up for 8 movies and end it with the hero's death? The hype that people had for this one is impossible to describe. For an adaptation where the source material had already been available for 4 years, people were treating this as if it was going to contain some huge surprise or twist. Just go read the book. You already know what's going to happen. Granted, the fans had stuck with the movie franchise for 10 years and not everyone had read the books. Overall, every Harry Potter junkie was looking forward to see how David Yates, the cast, and Warner Brothers were going to pull this off. I remember seeing this on opening night, and throughout the summer I saw it 3 times, and have even caught 2 additional re-releases since then in local theaters. This one is a movie that I'll see on the big screen anytime it's available, and for good reason. Regardless of what you may think of the film series as a whole, this one is about as epic as any finale can get. As you already know, I wasn't a huge admirer of Part 1. I describe it as a lower tier Potter flick, and it doesn't justify the existence of having a 2-part finale, especially since it got stuck with all the exposition. Luckily, Part 2 contains all the action, excitement, and tying up of loose ends, while also taking the time to introduce everything necessary for the movie to make sense, but it doesn't go overboard. For the most part, they really succeed. A lot of stuff that was brought up in Deathly Hallows Part 1 and the Half-Blood Prince pretty much goes ignored this time around, but I don't think they needed absolutely every detail in order for the story to work, and they have all the standout great moments that were discussed in the book. Opening night, it seemed like every few minutes there was a crowd-pleasing scene that would lead to thunderous applause. The return of the late John Hurt as Ollivander, the dragon escape at Gringotts, Harry confronting Snape, the final battle at Hogwarts, Molly Weasley shouting, "Not my daughter, you bitch," just before she kills off Bellatrix Lestrange. This one has all the punches, but it also has all the emotion. There are several times where the music gives me goosebumps, on top of all the tear-jerking moments. Come on, can anybody really get through Snape's memories without bawling like a baby? Sure, this was in the book, but the way the scene is edited using previously shot footage from the earlier movies while adding additional bits that give it so much weight, it really hits you hard. I've seen this one so many times, and like I said, it's up there as one of the best in the series, if not my second favorite, just behind Prisoner of Azkaban. However, having seen it many times and ignoring some of the inconsistent continuity with the editing, especially during the battle sequences, like seriously, just rewatch the statues fighting on the bridge. How long is this bridge supposed to be and how many statues are on there? There's stuff I start to notice and I wish wasn't so rushed. I already brought this up in the review of Part 1, but I hate that most of the Horcruxes are found in Part 2, and it becomes pretty easy to find them as things go along. They're building up the discovery of this lost diadem, how no one can find it and it hasn't been seen for years, and it maybe takes Harry 3 minutes to find it in the Room of Requirement. They also have several deaths that were a big deal in the book, but are only glanced upon in the film. Also, remember how Tonks was interrupted in Part 1 about the baby reveal? Well, it doesn't build up to much, except for an offhand remark that Harry makes to Remus's ghost. Like, seriously, if you never read the book, you would not have realized that Remus and Tonks had a baby until this scene. There's also things from the book that I don't think were necessary for the movie-only audience to keep up, but still, I could imagine confusion happening since they didn't include them, like how the resurrection stone was placed in Harry's snitch, or why the snitch only opened at that specific moment, or why the snitch had an opening at all, and why it's so special to the Seekers who catch them. Harry caught it at his first Quidditch match, but they never really seem to explain the connection to Harry, and why it can open for him, why is it special. They also have Harry's Horcrux killed inside him, but they never go into greater detail as to why Harry's sacrifice protects everyone at Hogwarts, and why he remains alive, and why Voldemort can't truly defeat him. They mention how the Elder Wand only answers to Harry, regardless of Voldemort wielding it, but I remember that the book had a longer explanation that went on for many paragraphs. However, a movie needs to be paced like a movie, and they can't include 17 paragraphs of Harry explaining to Voldemort the rules of death. They actually find neat ways to keep the scenes concise. I remember Aberforth's introduction and his distaste for his brother Albus was a big deal in the book that had a lot of exposition, especially regarding their little sister and Albus's attempt at getting the Deathly Hallows. However, a lot of this can easily be inferred in the group's interaction at Hogsmeade. Harry says it best. He trusted Dumbledore, regardless of any flaws. This easily sums it up. I always remember this scene just because of how Daniel Radcliffe really commands the screen with his subdued performance. Seriously, props to the guy for starting out small, but getting better as the series went along. I think he's honestly fantastic in this one. I also appreciate how this brings so many of the older characters and sets back for the finale. Nothing too major, but we get to see again Madame Pomfrey, Professor Sprout, the Malfoys, the Order of the Phoenix, a lot of the Gryffindor characters, and Griphook, who wasn't originally portrayed by Warwick Davis, but it's great to see him steal these scenes as the Goblin. Also, just as a quick addition, I always hated that the Pensieve was changed from the 4th movie to the 6th movie, but here, they show that they were the same Pensieve the whole time. It's a neat way to keep consistent continuity, especially for a fan like me, since I think I'm the only one who pointed out this specific error. There's also not one disappointing moment to be found. There's no cranky Ron, there's no camping scenes, things just move along, tied together with great actors. Now, I'm not sure if Ralph Fiennes is being too goofy this time around, or if he's just embodying the temperament of a villain on his last breath. I know the multiple times he yells out, "Yeah!" became a meme, but I think I love his performance. It's great that after his introduction in The Goblet of Fire, he's able to have a huge amount of screen time again, really chew on the scenery, and create a terrific, hammy antagonist who clearly only cares about himself and is unhinged. Of course, the best one of all is the late Alan Rickman as Snape, finally delivering a satisfying conclusion to all the promise we saw from him in the earlier films. He's gloomy, he's seemingly calculating, but he also has his moments of doubt and fear. One of the opening shots is of Snape as headmaster, alone standing on a pillar looking down at the school. The filmmakers know who the focal point of this story will be, as Snape's true allegiance is revealed in such a touching, heartbreaking, but wonderful way. I don't know if there's much for me to criticize. I love how this achieved the definitive look of the universe, but brought back some classic aesthetics, like the platform at 9 3/4 and Diagon Alley, but it also gave more updated appeal for some of the other effects and settings. Like, compare the first movie's Gringotts Vault to this Gringotts Vault. Plus, the score by Alexandre Desplat harkens back to the original cues created by John Williams while making unforgettable epic sounds. Is there anything that prepares you for battle the same way Desplat's piece titled Statues does? In a way, this does feel like one giant third act, but having seen it so many times in theaters, I think it stands on its own as an individual story. I suppose you'd need the information from the previous adaptations to understand every plot point, but then again, why are you seeing this if you haven't watched the others? As a popcorn flick, it delivers on the goods, and as a touching conclusion, it's memorable. It's odd to speak of the first movie as having classic aesthetics, but when the 8th film came out, The Sorcerer's Stone was already 10 years old, and now The Deathly Hallows Part 2 is 10 years old, and The Sorcerer's Stone will soon celebrate a 20-year anniversary. I mean, for reference, there were people in 2001 who were describing things like The Princess Bride and Labyrinth as classics, even though neither were 20 years old yet. And so, even though this makes me feel old, even though that's a statement I detest, but is nevertheless true, Harry Potter is very much the new classic. Obviously, the franchise has stayed alive, otherwise they wouldn't consistently be showing them on cable television, or have theme park attractions, or the new prequels. In the grand scheme, I hope people will remember how groundbreaking this was at the time, and how it inspired the idea of doing a cinematic universe concept, with sequels coming out sooner than every 3 years, but instead on a consistent basis. Even if they're currently focusing on the Fantastic Beasts saga, I really hope that they'll eventually leave Hogwarts and all the connections to the Harry Potter characters and just do something entirely new within the wizarding world to look at new types of magic, new types of worlds, and new characters. But then again, the fanatic side of me really hopes to see Harry, Ron, Hermione, and so many of the other characters again in the future, even if they return to their roles and have a smaller part of the film, you know, have a smaller role, sort of like what they did with The Force Awakens, and maybe even do an adaptation of The Cursed Child, or some kind of variation of it. I don't know. I'm a fan, okay? And in a lot of ways, this was my generation's Star Wars, and it's gonna have a lasting impact. It's already shown that it's gonna stand the test of time. I loved getting the chance to talk about all the Harry Potter films, to revisit them, and talk about some things that I've never heard brought up in other reviews or discussions because, you know, as a huge fan, I thought I had some unique takes on the films. But since it has been about 2.5 years, it probably is time that I start to watch them again from the beginning. So, I'm gonna start again. Not with the reviews, though. I'm just gonna watch them and not have to worry about writing a couple paragraphs. Thanks for watching, and mischief managed. Special thanks to Lukas for this Patreon request. Thanks for watching the video, and special shout out to Lauren, Anthony, Anna, Kirsten, Spencer, Lucas, Ryan, and Robert for supporting me on Patreon. By joining my Patreon, you can get exclusive blogs and videos, and for just $7, you can get your own monthly movie review. I hope you stick around, cinephile, and have a happy, productive